Hello and welcome to today's 10-minute episode of The Listening Lounge. My name is Nick Day, CEO of JGA Recruitment Group, specialist payroll and HR recruiters.
I'm delighted to welcome Trayton Vance, who is coaching consultant and strategic advisor, CEO and founder of the Coaching Focus Group. I'm going to ask just off the bat to make sure we're all kind of following the right guide here. What is coaching? Tell us more. Explain it from your side.
So coaching, quite simply for me, is facilitating the learning, development and performance of another. Obviously, if you're working on a one-to-one basis. If you're working with a team, then it's of others, i.e. a team. And also I'd ask your audience to think about how do we use coaching to facilitate the learning, development, performance of an organization. And from our world, we call that organizational coaching. But it's about raising awareness. It's about giving individuals an understanding of things they may not have thought of to enable them to play a better game.
We often hear coaching and mentoring kind of pulled together in the same kind of sentence. Where I'm a coaching and mentoring professional. But how do those things differ? How is coaching different to mentoring?
Yeah, it's two words that get very confused. I think they get confused because both coaching and mentoring use the same skills, the skills of listening, about having an effective conversation, about processing and raising that individual's thinking and knowledge. The big difference between coaching and mentoring is that to mentor somebody, you have to have that knowledge and that expertise in that particular topic. Whereas coaching, you don't. I could coach anybody on any topic. I just don't have to have that knowledge. So that's the main difference. The other difference is when you're mentoring, not only will you share your knowledge, but you may also share your network and your contacts that you've grown over the years that you've been specializing, if you like, in that arena. Where coaching, you might do that, but it's not an expectation. So I would say those are the two main differences.
It's a really interesting distinction because actually it helps frame my next question really, which is you mentioned when it comes to coaching, you didn't have to necessarily be a specialist in that particular area, but to coach someone, if we're trying to develop a high performance culture in our workforce, I guess it has to start really with developing a coaching culture first. So is that the case? And what is a coaching culture and how can we start that process?
Yeah, well, let's start, if I may, just focusing on that question. What is a coaching culture?
Right.
When I go to a lot of organizations, they ask me, we want to create a coaching culture. A coaching culture, or let's just take the word coaching out, a culture takes time to develop. So if we add the word coaching, if you just think about what a coaching culture is, it's a culture where coaching is the way we do things around here. Now what we need to do is unpick that and slice that and look at it in different ways and think about how do we do coaching? And when I work with a lot of organizations, they ask us to develop coaching by developing a skill set, by doing training programs. And that's one way. But actually, if you want to develop a coaching culture, then what you need to do is create a coaching mindset, not just a skill set, but a mindset. And then that's something where the sort of the value that you can get from the culture and from the people in it really starts to provide long-term sustainable performance and change.
Someone with your expertise, I mean, I invited you to the show because you are absolutely, amazing when it comes to coaching. You're so knowledgeable, work with some amazing brands, and you understand the intricacies of what developing a coaching culture is all about. However, I think there's still a skill gap here. It's difficult to immediately assume that HR professionals, L&D leaders are going to be able to embed a coaching culture without necessarily having the expertise to know how to become great coaches themselves, or then how to impart that knowledge elsewhere. You're also, I would say, and this is kind of a two-part question really, because you're also getting all the software and digital transformation companies and things hitting the space that are telling HR professionals, the future is all about empowering people through technology. And actually, I see this as a little bit different. It's about empowering people through coaching, which is, I wouldn't say it's in direct competition, but I think there's some ambiguity there in terms of how they both relate to each other. So I guess my main question is, what are the barriers we need to remove for people, or obstacles we need to overcome, depending which way you want to look at it, to enable HR professionals to become better coaches in order for them to really deliver a coaching culture? What are the things that are preventing that from happening? And is technology one of those obstacles? Maybe it's not. I'm just something I thought about in terms of sayings I've seen of enabling people through technology. And I wonder if that's in competition a little.
Yeah, I think one thing we've got to remember is that we've got the fourth industrial revolution going on. Absolutely. With digital and AI, and how will that impact the way in which we connect, take away COVID and lockdown and hybrid ways of working, which I still think HR community is struggling to work out the best practice for hybrid ways of working.
For sure.
So some of the barriers, I think and this might not land comfortable for your audience, but I think it's a lack of understanding within the HR world of what coaching is really about and how we can utilize it. So let me give you an example. When I go in to get a brief, a lot of HR directors will tell me who they want coached. And that's fine, but just think about that on a level. That's very tactical. That's targeting an individual or a set group. The question they should be asking is not who, but what needs to be coached within an organization. And the sort of mindset shift that the HR community need to do is shift to looking at coaching as a strategic resource, because that's what it is.
Sure.
Coaching can change as we talked about, can change the culture. It can change the performance. It can create sustainability, agility, innovation, creativity. So just thinking of coaching in that strategic way rather than a tactical training need is the first step, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually something you've mentioned there in terms of the impact it can have. It can also have an impact on some major HR agendas this year, which is looking at things like inclusivity, ensuring that values and behaviors are being lived within an organization. I guess this all comes back to the overall high performance culture element of a business, which obviously you're linking through having that through a coaching culture at the same time. So where do we start then? If I'm an HR director listening to this, enthusiastic, I'm proactive, I want to make a change, how do I start leveraging the power of coaching?
Yeah, so I think going back to that question, what's keeping my chief exec up at night? Where is it that I can help him or her to really focus the resource, i.e. our people, to facilitate the success of that and use coaching to enable that? So there will be, I'm sure, some business objectives, but certainly looking at research recently, there's how do we use coaching to facilitate hybrid ways of working, making that transition back into the workplace or not, as the case may be. How might we use coaching to facilitate new skills that we're going to be needing? How do we use that? And we talked about, mental health, well-being, workplace health. How do we create employee engagement? And how do we utilize coaching to focus on the diversity, sort of equity and inclusion elements? And just think about what you're trying to achieve. And then step back from that and say, okay, so if that's what we're trying to achieve, how do we use coaching to achieve that? And usually that will require an element of training, either an internal resource or an external resource to bring that in. And there's pros and cons for both. The nice thing with developing the internal capabilities, you have it there. If you bring in externals, then a bit like consultancy, then you may lose that. And, it's not ingrained within that. So there's a way of developing and creating that coaching capability and that skill set, as well as the mindset. And then the other thing just to think about is be realistic in the timelines. When you're using coaching, addressing some of these things, it's not necessarily quick wins. But believe me, and I hope there's enough case studies out there, if not, they're on our website, that you can see that by doing the coaching effectively in a focused way enables that great value and that return on the investment to come, and creates a sustainable system, a culture that will be around for longer, because people will think for themselves, they'll be more engaged, and the whole organization and society will be healthier in many ways.
I think that makes sense. I mean, it's rare that the quick fixes work, right? This is something you've got to invest in. It takes time. As you mentioned, there might be resistance, but eventually to develop that culture is such, as you say, something that right at the start of the show, culture is something that takes time to create, develop and build. Changing your values, changing your mission statement and behaviors written down for your employees doesn't change your culture. It's one thing to write them down. It's another thing to live by them and to embody them. So I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well, Trayton Vance, has been an absolute pleasure having you on today to share your world of coaching and why a coaching culture can be, I guess, so valuable to businesses. A huge thank you once again to Trayton Vance for joining me. I look forward to bringing you the next episode real soon. Thank you, Trayton.
Thank you, Nick. Pleasure. Bye-bye.